A few months ago, we went to Kahuku on Oahu's north shore to cover a protest. Residents were upset about the way iwi, those are native Hawaiian burial remains, were being handled on a construction project.
In their name, Henokupuno Kamakahiko, Mahalo Nuilo Yaoko, Nuikeloha, Mama, no.
As we witnessed this scene, we learned that people here were upset by more than just what they see as disrespect to their ancestors. A Florida developer, Continental Pacific, bought this land 6 years ago, and many of the people in this heavily Native Hawaiian community say the company's plans threaten to destroy their way of life. Glenn Maganoi, the president of a Kahuku Tenants Association, says the developer is systematically evicting people and carving up the property.
That house right there, the road runs right through their house. This house right here, the road runs right through.
And are those people willing to move?
No. That's their hometown. That's their house. Why should they move? That's why I was asking, if they're here to help us, they should build around us and within us, not through us.
This is Eddy Cano. Continental Pacific is trying to evict him so they can build a road where his house sits. His family has lived here yards from the beach for generations. It's one of the last untouched beachfronts on Oahu.
When I was a little boy, my parents used to take me and my brother and sister, and we used to camp down at the beach in this area, and we learned how to fish. We learned how to dive and spearfish. We learned how to catch taco, and this is where we learned how to swim. My dad, my grandparents taught me how.
Eddy has been going to court for months to try to stave off the eviction. What's unusual about Eddy's situation is that he actually owns this house, but not the land underneath it. It's one of the legacies from the Plantation era. And since Continental Pacific owns the land, the company says it has a right to build a road right through it.
For me, they want me to move because I'm in the way of the road. And why does this house gotta move? I mean, can't they just make a road right behind? Why make a road right through the house? They want me to move at my expense.
For now, Eddy's house is still standing. His volunteer lawyer has held off the bulldozers. But he says his front yard is a mess.
It used to be all pine trees right around here, all pine trees.
Yeah, and how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like, I feel very vulnerable, very naked, just like someone took all the trees away.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Continental Pacific bought 70 homes, an adjoining golf course, and the beachfront property in 2006, they promised to uphold a tradition of letting the descendants of plantation workers live here for nominal rents. And they promised people here a dream. Residents would be allowed to buy their properties outright for $75,000. And that wasn't all. They offered financing for those who couldn't get it, and to top it off, past rent from the residents would be applied to the purchase price. They said treating the plantation families well was in keeping with the ethos of James Campbell, who built the sugar plantation back in the 1800s. But his great-great-grandson, Robert Trotter, says actually Campbell would be turning over in his grave given what is happening to people like Eddy Cano.
My great-great-grandfather was, this is really interesting, related in marriage to Kahuku, and he believed in the kingdom. He did not really believe in the Americans. And at one point in his later life, he asked you, are you a loyalist or a separatist? And if you were a loyalist, you could pass through his yard, which was in Kapolani Park. If you were a separatist, he pulled his shotgun on you. So Mr. Campbell was a farmer, and he believed in the poor person because he started with nothing here and became one of the first millionaires in the state of Hawaii.
Trotter says the pact with the community started to unravel when Continental Pacific's plans to build luxury homes on one of Oahu's last untouched beachfronts fell apart.
Continental Pacific wanted to build 10 one-acre lots on the beach which you can't even build in Florida. Okay, you're not allowed to go down below the vegetation line in Florida. You have to stay above the sawgrass. They wanted to put the homes within 80 feet of the beachfront property. And so then they decided to move their 10 houses back onto the golf course and the sand dunes. Well, the sand dunes has seabirds in it. You can't affect the seabirds. We didn't stop them. Just the natural process of what is there stopped them.
Continental Pacific scrapped its plans for the beachfront development a couple of years ago because they said the city was requiring them to do an environmental impact statement that would cost too much. So these days, the developer is telling this mostly low-income community that if they want to stay in their homes, it will cost them a whole lot more. They doubled the lot price to $150,000, and as for that rent credit, they have told residents because the luxury plan fell apart, quote, they will be unable to extend the proposed rent credit. Adding to the turmoil, Continental Pacific has also told 25 families that because they are in a flood zone, they will have to move their aging homes by 2015 and pay for that expensive proposition themselves. Low-income tenants like Valerie Roberts say that because that would cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, that provision amounts to an eviction.
And to have someone come in and just try to say, well, this is how much you're going to pay for it, when you have elderly people here that probably won't be able to pay $150,000, what will happen to them? Would they have to leave as well? Will they get evicted? And that's what's sad to me. My mom's 95 years old. She's going to be 96 next month.
Glenn Moganoy says the tenants should be grandfathered in and allowed to stay.
If Laie, Haula, Honolulu can all live right next to a stream, my God, we can stay where we are because that's our land from our grandfathers and fathers. This is the last piece of Kahuku, and they're trying to take it away from us. We need all the help we can get to try and preserve the last of the last plantation identity. And they're trying to take it and rake it from us.
That kind of outspokenness may be costing Moganoy. The Tenant Association president recently got a letter telling him he is being evicted and needs to leave by December 7th. And he is not the only one. In fact, all 8 board members of the Tenants Association received eviction notices in the past few weeks. An attorney representing many Kahuku families says the evictions are retaliatory and thus illegal. In a letter to tenants, the company characterized the evictions as being done for, quote, business reasons. Continental Pacific declined requests for an on-camera interview, but they did tell us that many of the residents in Kahuku Village were excited about the idea of being able to purchase their homes from the company. They sent us this photo as evidence. The councilman who represents this area in Honolulu is concerned about what's happening in Kahuku. Ernie Martin introduced a resolution calling on the city to purchase the property through eminent domain. He says there is too much potential for profit at the expense of the community.
Continental Pacific and the initial beachfront parcels, they had estimated $1 million apiece for just those properties. Now, if they're allowed to subdivide the other properties, take them out of the floodplain, you can just only imagine what the price of those lots would be. It'd be far greater than $150,000, I can tell you that. I mean, that's the concern. And it's going to change the dynamics of that community. You know, it's no longer the old plantation town type of atmosphere that I think all of us want to preserve, especially those who serve in office for that region.
Martin's resolution to take over the former sugar plantation passed the city council unanimously. But for the city to spend the $5 million Martin is asking for requires the mayor to sign off. In Kahuku, residents told us they worry they aren't going to get a fair shake with Mayor-elect Kirk Caldwell. They point to the fact that the attorney who has been signing all those eviction notices and represents Continental Pacific is Lex Smith. Smith was also campaign manager for Kirk Caldwell. Caldwell, who was preparing for a fishing trip, did not respond directly to Civil Beat's calls, but a spokesperson for the future mayor did call us back on Caldwell's behalf and said, quote, Kirk Caldwell has nothing to do with Continental Pacific. It doesn't matter that Lex Smith is their attorney. Back in Kahuku, Eddy Cano and his attorney are still fighting his eviction. Meanwhile, he has more legal problems. Lex Smith has sent him another letter. Because he has refused to give up the fight, Continental Pacific is doubling his rent.
You are now a holdover tenant. As a holdover tenant, you are required to pay twice the monthly rent under the lease.
Continental Pacific told Civil Beat that Eddy's rent was raised to, quote, partially offset the unexpected legal cost to Continental Pacific resulting from his delay in relocating. A few hundred yards from Eddy's house is Robert Trotter's plantation home, where he has lived for 30 years. And even though he is the great-great-grandson of James Campbell, Continental Pacific is telling him he too has to move. Trotter says the whole situation, with so many families being evicted or told to relocate, is just a shame. What he says is needed is for all parties to sit down at the table and work out a solution.
And you need to meet at the table, you need to talk to the residents. What they bought was a living, breathing entity. It wasn't bare land with no people, you know. There were families here that have been here for 5 generations. And I know exactly where my property lines are. It hasn't changed in 29 years. They made it longer, they made it skinnier. Now they told me I gotta go over there. So, you know, what do you say to these people? Outside investors are good, but if you're gonna buy a living entity of people, you need to deal with them fairly.